Hello, this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. And yes, we are commanded to love one another, whether we want to or not, or whether we agree with each other or not. In the East African country of Rwanda, the government is closing churches going and coming. The first time I read that, I didn't know what to think of it. They're closing thousands of churches in that country. And I thought, are they becoming a secular country? So it was just curious to me about why a country would decide they're going to shut down all of these churches. And we know how much they complain in the international media about African government, about African governments and poor governance and fraud and all of that. And even Africans themselves complain about that in their governments. So I was wondering what's going on in Rwanda. And before I get into it, Rwanda was the country that they had the genocide, the big civil war between the Tutsis and the Hutus. So that now that the government has been put back together, I don't think they can even identify as tribes anymore. I think they've done the best that they could to do away with tribes. And it's always been said that tribalism is a problem in Africa. And tribalism was what brought about that genocide. They estimate that over 800,000 Tutsis were killed in that genocide. So that was a real tragedy. So now their government says no more tribalism. I think they call themselves Rwandese. You're just a Rwandese and that's that. And it's probably a good thing. But back to the churches. Recently, the Rwandan government led by President Paul Kagame did the unthinkable. The government clamped down on over 5,600 churches, including 100 cave churches. Rwanda explains why it closed thousands of churches again. Rwanda has shut down almost 10,000 places of worship in the past 2 months, and now its president has proposed making churches pay taxes on their income. The country's crackdown on houses of worship comes as part of an ongoing push to protect Rwandans from church corruption and fraud and to ensure that their buildings meet certain physical standards. Just weeks after winning his 4th term, President Paul Kagame condemned mushrooming churches that squeeze even the last penny from poor Rwandans. So what this sounds like is that prosperity preaching has reached Rwanda, and these preachers are shaking poor people down for money. So the government is making them pay taxes on the money. This is really sad because these people really went through a tragedy and they might be looking to the higher power to renew their strength. And you've got people that's really kind of just money grabbing. That's what it sounds like. These unscrupulous people who use religion and churches to manipulate and fleece people out of their money and other things will force us to introduce a tax, the president said in his first remarks since taking his oath of office on August 11th. The Rwanda Governance Board, which oversees the country's places of worship, found that thousands of churches, many of them rural Pentecostal congregations, failed to meet legal requirements around theological education, building codes, and sanitation regulations. What they're saying is that these churches don't meet any kind of building code regulations, so they're not structurally sound. And as far as sanitation, they said they have as many as 1,200 people in a church with only one bathroom. And in one report, the people were complaining that they had these prayer houses and they are having church day and night. And on over in the night, they're singing this loud gospel music and people can't even sleep. So they're basically disturbing the peace. So the government is cracking down on them. The governance board delineates between churches which are officially registered with the government and prayer houses, or places where Christians worship and which exist under churches. So they are calling prayer houses using their own homes, somebody said, and even the people in Uganda say they do the same thing. Everybody got a little place of worship. Everybody's living next to a prayer house. They're just fleecing people out of money, and they're not even trained pastors according to them. In a statement to the magazine Christian Today, the governance board confirmed that it had inspected 14,000 prayer houses in July and closed 70% of them for non-compliance with established regulations, including registration, building codes, safety, hygiene, sanitation, and financial or other exploitation of followers. And also, they were complaining about them just up preaching anything, stuff they made up. That's what they're preaching, but all in the name of trying to get money out of people. So what do y'all think about this? The government coming in and closing down these prayer houses, not the registered churches, not the actual conventional churches that meet building regulations and sanitation regulations, and where the preachers are at least ordained or have some kind of biblical training. What do y'all think about that? And the reason I'm interested in this is because I'm thinking ahead to one day we might have a nation, or we may be in a situation where we actually have to govern ourselves outside of the authority of the United States government. I was discussing this with a group of friends, and several of them were of the opinion that if Black Americans ever got any kind of a country, we would have to be under martial law for the first 50 or 75 years, because we are so used to operating under the authority of people who are really, some might say, enemies, that we will actually have to start from scratch. And we would have to have some type of military leader, some kind of military tribunal to govern us for the first few years based on laws that we make up. Like when children are in class, they come to school the first day of school, and in the first few days you make up classroom rules with them. And the rules that the children make up for the class are actually more harsh and stricter than the rules that the teacher would make up. So you let the people make up their own rules, and then you have to have a governing body to enforce those rules. Now, this president, they call him a lot of different things, but Rwanda is said to be the cleanest and the safest country in Africa. Since the 1994 genocide, Rwanda has made significant strides on the world stage in terms of economic growth and development, political stability, and international rankings. So what do y'all think about this? Do you think this president is right to close down these churches and regulate these churches and require them to come up to building codes and sanitation codes? Is he overstepping, or is it responsible leadership? Compare this to Nigeria, where 90 buildings have collapsed in the last few years with people in them and killed over 350 people. Compare these two governments. Let me know. Thank you for listening, and have a good evening.